Are you ready for one more spanner in the works? So now you've got the profile. You understand how it flows. You understand compatibility. Obviously, you understand dominance. You understand the various nuances of each profile. You understand free flow. You understand delayed flow. You understand mixed flow. And obviously, you know what happens when a person moves from the integrated state, where all 14 variables are available, to the so that's the integrated zone, to the expert zone, which is the hardwired default wiring. And you'll also know what happens when they move one level lower into the stress zone, because every time the profile gears down a little bit, we become slightly less. And that's why stress levels rise, because we have less of our experts available. Okay, now we're going to add one more section, which is called a preferred sensory modality. So we spoke about the eyes and the ears. There are three sensory modalities. The one is visual, through your eyes. One is auditory, using your ears. And the third is kinesthetic. Now, kinesthetic is a feeling, but it's not an emotional feeling. It's a sensation in the body. It's typically what sportsmen and women are excellent at. It's that feel, they know when they're in the groove. They know when they hit the sweet spot. So kinesthetic means that sensing of your body, but it also means touch. So now you've got your client's mind dynamics profile, but it's important, especially in terms of your interaction with your client, to know which of these three sensory modalities are their preferred sensory modality. Are they more visual? Because then I need to show more. Are they more auditory? Because then I need to be very careful of how I speak to them. Or are they more kinesthetic? Would they benefit more from experience than being shown and told only? So it's a very simple process. It's a very simple assessment technique. You place a square piece of paper, still the old school, pen and paper, square piece of paper. Why square? Because the moment you use a landscape page, you are suggesting a shape. So square makes it equal to all sensory modalities. And what you do, you want them to draw an infinity sign. What is an infinity sign? Infinity sign is an infinity sign. Moves up to the left, down, across, so it's an 8 on its side. Okay, so what you want to do is place that piece of paper right in front of them. Okay, they start anywhere on the page, but they need to draw one big. It's useless if it's tiny, because this assessment is based on the work of Walter Penfield in the 1950s, but nobody has been able to dispute the work of Walter Penfield yet. And the whole NLP process has actually utilized a lot of Penfield's work, where they work on all the other applied psychologies using eye movement. Okay, so the assessment is actually a neurological assessment of the pattern in which your eyes turn more often. A neurological assessment of the pattern in which your eyes turn more often. You might have noticed, if you ask a person a question, some people go, and especially with children, you want to say the answer's not on the ceiling. Well, frankly, it is for some. Because the moment you turn your eyes up, you're not looking at the answer on the ceiling, but the moment the eyes turn up, it activates, according to Walter Penfield, the visual cortex, the visual part of the brain, the occipital lobe. The moment you ask a person a question and they go, and they turn their eyes horizontally from ear to ear, they activate the temporal lobe associated with auditory input. And the moment you ask a question and they involuntarily look down, yes, they may want to avoid eye contact, but more often than not, they're actually pushing the buttons in the brain that access their feelings, the kinesthetic element of their memory. You must remember, some people remember what they've seen, some what they heard, and some what they felt. So the visual modality is very fast. Auditory, slightly slower. Kinesthetic, much slower, because when you look up, you see an image, it's immediate. When you listen, it takes a while because you need to listen through the whole sentence. When you feel, feeling is instantaneous. Have you noticed that when your body responds to something, it comes in a wave, it takes a bit of time. So there's a change, there's a difference in tempo. This is vitally important as a coach, because you need to adjust your tempo of speech to the tempo of your client's preferred modality and the associated tempo of processing. So when we do this assessment on a square piece of paper, you can use a pen, you can use a pencil, it can be colorful, it can be black, it really doesn't matter. You ask them to start anywhere, but draw a huge infinity sign on that page. It's a neurological assessment of visual pathways. So if it's too tiny, the eyes don't move enough to give us information. So it has to be a decent size page. So A4, just square it. And then a nice big infinity sign. You've drawn a line through the crossing point. The crossing point represents the tip of your nose. So when you look at that, and remember, your line needs to be parallel to the top and the bottom part of the page, okay? Now, when you look at that infinity sign, if the lines are bigger above the line, it simply means the crossing point represents the tip of your nose. So if the lines are bigger above the line, what does it mean? The eyes were turning up more easily than they were turning sideways or down. What does that mean? If it's bigger above, the person is more visual. And if they're more visual, wow, following your manual, there's lots of implications for people who are visual processors that will come into play in terms of your relationship as a coach. And what happened if you look at that infinity sign and it's bigger towards the side? Well, it's bigger towards the ears. What does that mean? They prefer to process on an auditory level. So sometimes you'll see it's flat. It actually looks a bit like Zorro's mask. And other times it's rather large, but it's flat on the sides. It's as though they ran out of paper. So if they had a bigger paper, they probably would have rounded it, and it would be easier to see that it's an auditory infinity sign. So when it's flat, mask-like, more towards the ears, auditory. If it looks a little bit like it actually looks like a bow, because it's huge, but it's cut on the sides because it comes down at the edge of the paper. It's also auditory. They simply ran out of paper. So what does that mean? Follow in your manual. And what if the infinity sign is much bigger below the line? That means they're more kinesthetic, because it means that they look down more often than they look up or sideways. So eye movements is a wonderful way to determine a client's preferred sensory modality, because that impacts, and it can impact quite substantially on the effectiveness of your rapport building with your client the moment you understand how do they prefer to receive information.